Moving right along, we are now in the third section of the chapter, which is on respiration. Now that we have all this lovely glucose made, now we need to understand how the cells are going to take the glucose and make energy out of it. So the overall equation for this reaction is right here, and it should look very familiar because basically if you take this equation and you flip it backwards, you're going to have the equation for photosynthesis. Okay, so I'm going to take the glucose, and by using oxygen, I'm going to break that glucose down. I'm actually going to burn it, and I'm going to make carbon dioxide and water as waste products, but in the process, I'm going to release a lot of energy. So the whole purpose for this is to turn our glucose into ATP. Now, photosynthesis is only going to happen in plant cells or in certain other types of cells that we'll discuss later on in the course that have chloroplasts in them. But all cells are going to participate in respiration. Part of the process takes place in the cytoplasm, and part of it takes place in the mitochondria. And I believe when we talked about the parts of the cell, we said the mitochondria is sometimes called the powerhouse of the cell because it's where the bulk of this respiration process takes place. But the first part of it does occur in the cytoplasm. I want to talk real briefly about the structure of the mitochondria. It's not quite as complex for our purposes as the structure of the chloroplast is. So basically what you need to understand about a mitochondria is that, again, it is membrane bound, and you're going to have all of these. You have an outer membrane, and then you have these inner membranes on the inside. And the inner membrane, what it really does is it provides a whole lot of extra surface area, a whole lot of extra spots in order for the reaction to take place. So this area inside of here is called the matrix. And all of these folds, whoops, not here, too big of a circle, a little excited there. So the folds in that membrane, each one is called a crista. And so the plural is called the cristae. And so this right here is going to be called your intermembrane space. Intermembrane space. Inter just means in between. And so the space between the outer membrane and then the inner membrane. And so this, again, this membrane provides spots for all of these reactions to happen. Now, the very first reaction that you read about today is called glycolysis, and it does take place in the cytoplasm and not in the mitochondria. So what that means is that for glycolysis, although overall for respiration to take place, oxygen is required, the first stage does not require any oxygen, and therefore it is called an anaerobic reaction because it doesn't require oxygen to take place. Now, she went through a whole lot of details about how this reaction happens, but here's the big picture. You're going to take a glucose molecule, and in order to kickstart the reaction, in order to get the thing going, just like you have to strike a match to get a fire going, I have to add 2 molecules of ATP to get this reaction started. Once I do that, I break this glucose down into 2 molecules of what is called pyruvic acid. And when I do that, in the process of making and breaking a whole bunch of other bonds, I also am going to produce a total of 4 ATPs and 2 NADHs. Now, that NADH may look sort of familiar. When we were talking about photosynthesis, we had NADPH, but this is NADH. It's still similar in that it's a very high energy molecule. We use it to transport energy from one spot to another, and usually in the form of high energy electrons. The difference is that this is the one that's used in respiration and not photosynthesis, and there's no P in it. Okay, so the P goes with the photosynthesis one. This one does not have a P. Now, just like your teachers tell you, you always need to reduce fractions. So like if you have 6/8, you always want to reduce that to 3/4. when you have a reaction like this, if I've got the same thing on both sides, I want to try to simplify that. And so the 2 ATPs that I use to kickstart the reaction actually kind of get canceled out by 2 of the ATPs over here. So I'm actually going to kind of cross this out and make this a 2, and I'm going to get rid of this one completely. Okay? So if you get this part from glycolysis, that's what you need to understand for this, and then kind of keep this in the back of your mind, because then we're going to put it together with the other stages of respiration tomorrow.